Yeah, let the big dog hunt. Joe Staszak in the house again with you. Time for another episode of Kallas Remarks with yours truly and Steve Kallas, the man on my right, if you're looking for my point of view. Steve, how are you, man?
All good, Joe. Great to be with you as always.
A historic week in the NBA, the NHL, and all the other teams that followed suit in solidarity for the shooting in Wisconsin of Jacob Blake. The NBA took a 2-day hiatus. Some of the players thought they were bagging it for the season. Some of them wanted to bag the season. NHL followed suit. Everyone returns to action tomorrow. What'd you think about this crazy week?
Well, I'm kind of glad that it shook out the way it shook out. I mean, again, to have these shootings, I won't say on a weekly basis, but seemingly often, in the light of what the whole country's going through, pandemic, racism, kind of hard to believe that another cop did this.
Can't believe it.
We haven't heard any real explanation from them. They have come out and said he supposedly had a knife in his car. They left out the fact that he had his 3 young sons in the car. So if you got a guy pulling a gun on you, I don't think you're pulling the knife on him. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And really, to me, I don't know why he wasn't restrained from going into the car. You know, the cop had his hand on the guy, really shoot him in the back 7 times. So it's not going to pass the smell test no matter what they come up with. It's very disappointing, but I'm glad of the reaction because this really is, we as a country got to do something. I think intelligent Black people know it's great to have finally some really, I don't know how to say, extra white help, for lack of a better term. But, you know, my son's been to a couple of marches up in Ithaca, New York, and he said, you know, there's a ton of white people going to these things. Any of the stuff you watch in New York or wherever they had, you know, lots of protests. Finally, after all these years, some would say after all these centuries, you know, there's finally a groundswell, if you will, of millions of people. This is not a small number. And of course, we have an election, you know, in like 66 days or whatever it is. And now the lines are being drawn, the conventions are over. But, and again, I don't want to go political, but there's clearly 2 far apart views of America.
Right.
And, you know, I think Doc Rivers said it best. I would encourage everyone to go read the Doc Rivers quotes. But the stuff that he said, you know, Trump and them are talking about fear, and we're the ones who are getting shot and hung and killed. Doc Rivers, of all the people I've heard, Doc Rivers was really the best. And he gave like a 3 or 4 minute speech post game after, you know, after they had crushed Dallas. Which I know we'll talk about later. It's less important, but we should talk about it. But he gave an incredible speech that I think everybody should watch.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. Pretty emotional, too. A lot of guys crying, and Troy Vincent was crying when he was talking about, you know, what the NFL might do, and Doc Rivers couldn't hold it together. Really kind of hits home with a lot of these guys.
I don't know if you saw the Dominic Smith one because it was interesting. The Mets and Marlins played. Dominic Smith was the only guy to take a knee, which I kind of found surprising. But then overnight, you know, he was so good after the game, he started crying. You know, nobody cares. It's incredible. How can people still not care? And then the next day, they had that whole thing where they decided, the Mets and Marlins, not to play. And the Mets actually took the field as a symbolic gesture, came off the field, and they put a Black Lives Matter T-shirt on home plate.
Yeah.
And you could tell from one day to the next, because as the Mets were running, you know, off the field, he tipped his cap to the Marlins for kind of joining in. They also had 42 seconds of silence in honor of Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
So you're right. The ones you pointed out were clearly the most emotional and the best, as was the whole Mets thing, because it flipped in a day. It was one guy on a knee becoming passionate after a game, which led to the cancellation. And I think there were 7 major league games that were canceled yesterday, 3 the day before. A little haphazard. I'm glad, as I'm sure you are, that the NHL now is taking 2 days off because, as you know, they have very few African-American players. But to their credit, that Ryan Reeves, who is, you know, like the all-time bad guy fighter who's African-American, I think, or he's black, you know, he gave an impassioned plea with like 40 white guys behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also kind of changed in a few days. And I'm glad that did, because they're all in the bubble and they're all in Canada. And most of them, as you know, are not minorities. But good for the NHL. Better late than never, but good for the NHL. You know, WNBA and step. I think this is a good thing, you know, and I'm glad the basketball players are coming back, because if they totally walked away, as some said, they'd really lose their bully pulpit.
I agree.
If all these guys went somewhere else, what's going to happen?
One of the guys didn't want to start the season. I'm like, that's your forum. You're right. You can accomplish much more with a big forum and all eyes on you than if you disperse. I thought that was not well thought out. You know, speaking of Kyrie Irving, he was one of the guys who wanted to tag the season. But, you know, you mentioned the NHL. 2 days off for the Flyers. They were going to go back-to-back games with the Isles. Harry won the other day, blew a 3-goal lead. They already did that once to the Islanders this year and lost in a shootout.
Right.
Had to win in overtime. Philip Myers with a shot from the point. But for the time being, pretty much saved their season. The Isles, they keep coming. They keep coming. They're well coached, and they play good defense.
Yeah, the Islanders are a lot better than the Canadians, as we knew beforehand. Yeah. I think the Canadians have kind of raised their level for a couple of series, but the Islanders are rock solid. We both think they have a Hall of Fame coach already. He won a cup with the Caps. They probably should have put him in the Hall of Fame the day after that happened, because now the Caps are one and done.
Kicked him to the curb, and then Todd Reardon gets fired after 2 years. First-round exits. I mean,
wow, you don't want to follow Barry Trotz wherever you coach. I will say that. No, you do not. But yeah, you're right. They're defensively minded. They have good goaltenders. But again, I give the Flyers credit, because I thought, and we talked to, we texted during the game, once they're up 3-0 and they lose that lead, and because of the challenge, which I think still might have been a good challenge, like you said.
It was a good challenge. It was a good challenge.
The problem with, and I think you said it, they have an overhead, but it wasn't like a good enough overhead. And the one from the whole other side of the ice, you literally couldn't see, because, or what I saw was the guy was coming out and only had to get his skate on the line, but you couldn't see across the ice. But when you could see, the puck was well over the blue line.
Well over.
So I don't know if they're telling us you can't. It's like when you can't see the puck. I don't know, but you know it's in.
You know it's there.
Right. So I thought, and again, they must have thought, because the penalty now, the penalty is a penalty. And it didn't used to be like that. And to give them a power play, and I thought, I probably texted you at the time, if they score on the power play,
disastrous.
The Flyers are done. But you're right. They made a comeback. You know, Hart was great in game one. Just okay. But the Islanders kept coming and coming and coming. And I'm sure you watched the game. Between periods, they were like, yeah, the Islanders are coming, man. They got one. It's 3-1. And I think they thought correctly, Jonesy and Anson Carter, they were both like, yeah, the Islanders are coming. I didn't think they were, but I was wrong. They came back to 3-3. But that's really an incredible win. And once again, I'll complain to you, as I have over the years. So Myers takes the slap shot. It is deflected by a defenseman, 40 feet from the goal. It literally goes down and bounces into the net. Yep. And I love hockey, as do you, but I'm always amazed nowadays with the camera work they have, where you can see how much of this is, frankly, luck. But you know what they say, put the puck on net and good things will happen. And that's just another of thousands of examples of a good thing happening. So I think the Flyers saved themselves. It's not a series if they're down 2-0 after a 3-0 lead, but it's still going to be very, very tough. The Islanders are just so solid. But, I think the Flyers have a big shot. And as we know, they have the goalie, if he's healthy, for the next 10 years at least.
Reminds me of, and I don't expect most people to remember this, in '95, the Flyers had their breakout season, and Carl Dykhouse, who maybe scored 2 goals in his life, bounced the puck about 35. It looks like he was skipping a stone across the pond over Dominic Hasek's arm to win a game in overtime against the Sabres for the Flyers. But it was exciting. I love overtime hockey. Yeah. When you're in it, it's a little different than when you're just a neutral observer, but it was good stuff. The other series I love is the Lightning and the Bruins. Lightning trying to obviously avenge their sweep to the Blue Jackets last year. Bruins, very good team. Right now, the Lightning leads that series 2-1. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think the Tuukka Rask thing is coming back to haunt them because they pulled Halak for a guy. I have to say, I don't even know. And they said it was so unfair to put him in. And it went from like, I don't know, what was it, 4 goals to 7 goals or 3 goals to 7 goals. And I know you're pulling the goalie to give him just like Alain Vigneault pulled Hart in that game and then put him right back the next day. But because Tuukka Rask left, and give the Bruins credit, I mean, they're that good. They won the series without him. Halak is a good goaltender.
Yes.
But if you're going to pull him, and I don't think they'll pull him again, you got a guy who essentially hasn't played. And that's a problem to stick him in a playoff game against a team as explosive as Tampa Bay. So I think I like Tampa Bay in that series. I agree with you. Last year was, talk about cheapening the regular season, Joe, which we've talked about over the years. I mean, come on, you have a team like Tampa Bay last year and they get swept, but they're out for revenge. I analogize them to Virginia in college basketball when Virginia lost the 116 game. I did not think they could come back and win the title the next year, but they did, and all credit to Virginia for doing that. I don't know if Tampa Bay can do the same thing, but they're in the mix because I think this is a very Flyers and Islanders, they're very good teams. Are they, oh my God, they're going to win the Stanley Cup teams before the playoffs? I don't think so. The Bruins maybe were considered the best, but they had Tuukka Rask and Halak was the backup. Now they have Halak, and to me, they have no backup. And Tampa Bay is that team that could squeeze through because of what happened last year. And, they're still so explosive. So I think it's wide open, certainly in the East. I told you I like Vancouver in the West, but I think the Vancouver-Vegas winner, whoever that is, comes out of the West. It's kind of like me saying the Lakers-Clippers, that's the championship series. So we'll see what happens in both sports. But, I like Tampa Bay in that series because now they can't take the goalie out again. If he gives up 4 goals in a period, if they take him out, they're going to give up 9 goals, and they now know that. Yeah. So I think because of the loss of Tuukka Rask, they're now in a box. They tried to get out of it yesterday. They did give their now number one a breather, which is what you have to do. You don't want him to give up 7, 8 goals. Then he's shot. And again, these are the playoffs, so you're going to see the same team over and over and over again.
What do you think of the games, how they're presented? I've been asked that on the radio 100 times. Aside from the wide shot, when you see the empty seats, and they did a pretty nice job masking them with these big screens. It looks like Jerry. If you've ever been to Jerry World, TV goes like 300 yards across the top of the field. But I see, once I'm watching the game, and I know they pump in some noise, and when the Flyers score, they have their home horn, go off. So they have the home team's, little nuances. To me, it looks like a game. I mean, unless you pull out, to me, it looks like a normal game. And I think the same thing. Now, maybe not for the players. I mean, they've to a man, most of them say, there's not the energy of the NHL playoffs because there's no fans. But it still looks like the players are playing at a high level.
I think all things considered, it's fine. I think that's the most important thing. This is playoff hockey. And when you're watching it, you're like, yeah, this is playoff hockey.
It is. Yeah.
So I don't really pay much attention to that. The NBA with the fans moving and the famous people.
That's unbelievable. They have them behind the net, like doing this. Like what?
I don't know if they should be doing that, Joe. But whatever they are. But I think again, on balance, you know me. The game's the thing, so you can put whatever you want around the game. It's not going to It's not going to replace the fact that there are no fans. And I agree. And people have used the Sixers, frankly, as an example of that. They never had a chance to go home. But they were 29-2. Yeah. And I wouldn't. I think because you and I talked before the series, the lack of Simmons was the death knell before it even started. So I don't even know that they would have won in Philly without Simmons. But again, the record is what the record is. They were horrific on the road. And these, if not road games, were non-home games. Mm-hmm. And that was the 76ers' advantage. I don't know if it was a mental thing or if it was a crowd thing or some combination of both. But I'll say it again, all things considered, I think it's fine, especially in hockey, where it looks like playoff hockey to me.
It does. The players, they seem to block it out and just raise their level. That's why I love playoff hockey, especially
Right.
death overtime. There's nothing like it. You mentioned the 76ers. I've been calling for Brett Brown's head for a while. I'm certainly not, alone. A lot of people they've had it with Brett Brown. The next day after they get bowed out in a sweep to the Celtics, he gets whacked. What did you think of that? Did you think it was the right move? And any candidates that you think might? I mean, they're not going to get Jay Wright. He owns Villanova. He's getting paid handsomely. He's not greedy. He runs the show down there. He has 2 national championships in the last 3. He's a god. He's not going to the NBA where he will eventually get fired. So, but they keep talking about bringing Jay Wright in for interviews and blah, blah, blah. Not going to happen, fellas. Who do you like maybe to replace Brett Brown? Because I'm hearing Tyronn Lue is one of their leading candidates.
Well, you're a Villanova guy, so you know about Jay Wright, why he would leave. And frankly, when these college guys – now, Brad Stevens was at Butler. Butler is not Villanova. And even though he got to the championship game, I think twice
back-to-back years.
He didn't win, but he's a heck of a coach. But as you said, Jay Wright is God in Villanova, God on the main line. He's making a lot of money. He has a good life. As you said, once you get hired in the NBA, you get hired to get fired. I heard that the Nets were trying to get Greg Popovich, and I assume if Popovich could leave San Antonio and coach Durant and Kyrie, although maybe he doesn't like Kyrie's rep, as opposed to Simmons and Embiid, the talk down there, as you know, of getting rid of Simmons or Embiid or blowing it up is beyond stupid to me. Again, I wish, like everybody, like we've been saying for 3 years, go practice 10-footers 1 year, then 11-footers the next, then 12-footers the next. You could make a 13-footer by now. Mm-hmm. Don't even talk to me about threes. Just talk to me about Kawhi's mid-range game. They say on TV, the analytics guys hate Kawhi. But he must be shooting 80% in his mid-range. That has to count for something. But in terms of coaches for Philly, is Larry Brown still coaching? I love Larry Brown. I know. I'm sure he's too old.
He's like 93 years old, but he's awesome.
But I don't know who the guys are. There's lots of jobs available. Would a guy like Stan Van Gundy be the guy? I don't think so. I like Stan Van Gundy. Jeff Van Gundy? I don't think so. I don't know who stands out. Popovich, if available, stands out. But if it's really true that the Nets are looking at him, if I'm Popovich and I can coach the Nets next year or the 76ers next year, I'm coaching the Nets. So I don't know who those candidates are. I feel a little bad for Brett Brown. I thought if they loved him, which obviously they don't, they fired him, but you could use the excuse of the bubble. You could use the excuse of no home games. You could use the excuse of no Simmons. If you wanted to give him, you could have painted that. But clearly, you were talking about it last year and the year before. Is Brett Brown the guy for this team? He took them from 15 or 17 wins to where they are. But sometimes you can take them so far and then you can't get over the hump. Mm-hmm. He didn't get over the hump last year. You can tell me that's a 4-bounce jumper by Kawhi, but they still would have had to beat him in overtime. And so I don't give them the benefit of the doubt that they would have won. If they were winning that game when he took the shot, then maybe you could say it doesn't bounce 4 times and in. But as you know, it was tied. So I still think it's as much about the GM. And I know Elton Brand was hailed early, but now with no Redick, no real replacement, no Jimmy Butler, no real replacement. You've said the whole time Tobias Harris is not a max guy. He's a very good player, not a max guy. He was not up to the task of really becoming not even the number 3, but the Jimmy Butler type. And I don't know if Jimmy Butler was number 3 because he's the alpha dog.
Yeah.
So I think it's still an ill-fitting team, but I really think they have to get the guys behind him, behind Simmons and Embiid. They need a couple of lockdown 3-point jumpers. I don't know that they have them like JJ. They're not going to get another Jimmy Butler. He's not walking through that door. Right. So they really kind of have their hands tied a little, but they need to improve the people around Embiid and Simmons. And frankly, Tobias Harris has to just be better. I don't know if he can be, but he has to play up to his contract.
5 points below his season average in the playoffs. I say it all the time. Per annum, he gets paid more than Kawhi Leonard. It's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
And Al Horford getting paid $97 million over 4 years. No one's going to take that contract. They're kind of capped out. They paid Embiid. They paid Simmons. I don't know what they're going to do. They're in luxury tax area,
Right.
With free agents and how they're going to get any like legitimate shooters. But they certainly need that because since Ilyasova and Bellinelli left after the 52-win season when they won 16 in a row to close the season, they haven't had that shooting except for, like you mentioned.
That's a good point. Yeah, those are two other guys.
JJ Redick. You talk to Clippers. We saw an unbelievable game. My family was sitting here. There was a timeout. Most of them don't know who Luka Doncic is. I said, watch them get it to that big white guy. There's no one else is going to take this last shot. And he buries a bomb from like, 3/4 court. I mean, it was just sensational. They're down 3-2 in the series, but they're hanging tough with the Clippers.
Yeah, well, I actually did a thing on that one play with my son, who said before the series he thought that Dallas could win. And frankly, if Porzingis doesn't lose his mind in game one, which he did, and hasn't played in the last two, you could give Dallas a shot to win. I didn't think they could, but now what's happened, of course, well, on the Doncic shot, I thought that Landry Shamet, who, by the way, has become a very good basketball player, the 76ers could use him. He can make threes and he can defend, but he was guarding Finney Smith on the inbound. I thought, never talked about in TNT. Everybody, Kenny Smith screaming, "Oh, Kawhi, you have to get over the pick." Okay, the guy was 6'10", 250 picking him, but I agree. You got to try and fight it over, and Kawhi just kind of half did it. Yeah. And I thought, if anything, Kawhi should have kept going and doubled him. That's what everybody said. But what I said was, Landry Shamet's 5 feet from Doncic where he got it in. He got it in right near the inbounds. And Finney Smith ran away into the corner, obviously to take Landry Shamet with him. I thought Shamet, as soon as the ball was thrown in, 3.7 seconds, he should have run and doubled Doncic, because either you'll take the ball out of Doncic's hands, which is what you'd like to do, let anybody else, if the other guy makes a shot, you say, you win. But if Doncic tried to take a shot, now he's double teamed. Reggie Jackson, I know he's too small, they said. He did contest, but if Shamet had run right over there, I don't think he gets it off right away. And if he does, it would be more of a heave than a shot. But you got to give Doncic credit. Sprained ankle, 43 points, triple-double. He was incredible, but I think in the next game, I think he was hurting. Maybe he got through on adrenaline the first time with a bad ankle. But the second game, the game after the winning shot, it wasn't a game. And the reason was twofold. I think Doncic was hurt. Porzingis didn't play. But on the other side, Paul George finally came to the party. If they're going to win the championship, they need Paul George. And after 3 horrific games, he was the first guy apparently ever to score 35 points in a playoff game in less than 25 minutes. And he was on fire, but that's what we expected from Paul George. And in games 2, 3, and 4, he was horrifically bad. And to his credit, admitted it. But if he plays like Paul George, this series is over. And I don't know if Porzingis is coming back. Now he's got a few extra days where maybe he can come back. But I'm hoping, as you know, our guy Patrick Beverley, you love him if you're rooting for the Clippers. You hate him if it's anybody else. But they need Beverley, I think, also to win the championship. And he's been out with a calf strain for a long time. And he's a gamer, so there's something wrong there.
Well, I don't know if it's too early, but I think what's fascinating is that trade on draft day where the Hawks, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they acquire Trae Young from Dallas and they sent Luka Doncic there? Dallas must have seen something in Doncic, and Atlanta must have seen something in Trae Young, because Trae Young this year averaged almost 30 points a game. Is sensational. And we know what Doncic is. Who got the better of that deal?
Boy, that's a tough one. I would say Doncic, because of what I've seen him do now under pressure. And, everyone says he's only 21 or he's going to be 22 or whatever. But he's played in the pro leagues. The European players now are not the European players of a generation ago. These guys have played against 25 and 30-year-old men for 3 or 4 years before they show up. And I think clearly the Clippers tried to intimidate both Porzingis and Doncic, and they're having none of it. And even though Porzingis lost his mind, and that was a big, I thought it was stupid. They called the T on Paul George early in that first game for just, waving his fist 30 feet away from the referee. So when Porzingis did it, they had to call a tech on him. And then I thought he got a little bit suckered to get the second tech in the pushing match. And my son thinks that after that, they called the refs up and said, don't give these stars technical fouls. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know they had one in the later Dallas game where I think originally they gave a double tech, and one was to Doncic, and then I think they reversed it to just make it, fouls. So he might be right. You don't want those guys. You don't want Porzingis out of the game. You can make a case they could have won that game, but I think now with a 3-2 lead, the old whoever wins game 5 wins like 80% anyway. Yeah. And again, if Paul George is Paul George, this series is over, even if Porzingis comes back. But Paul George, to me, is the key in getting back Beverly to the Clippers winning the championship, not just winning this series.
Looks like the Bucks are going to take the Magic. They're up 3-1. In the East, I think an intriguing matchup, and they're waiting to play each other in the next round. The Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics, who I thought looked sharp. They look sensational. And I'm so impressed. I'm impressed with the Raptors this year without Kawhi, what they did in the regular season. So you have, I'll never say that anything's a done deal, but you have the Milwaukee Celtics and the Raptors. That probably one of those teams are going to make it to the finals. Who comes out of the East?
Well, I did not like the Raptors because they had lost Kawhi all year, but after watching them, and even before the playoffs, Nick Nurse, Coach of the Year.
Great job.
Yeah, I picked the Raptors to come out of the East, even though originally I thought it was going to be all Milwaukee. I still think you can do something if you're an intelligent team. I think you can do something with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And, he got Defensive Player of the Year, and he might get MVP as well, Joe. So that's, pretty incredible. But I think the Raptors, look, how many championship players do they have on that team? 6, 7, 8, 9? All of their stars, Siakam, and then, Lowry, they're all now NBA champions. And to me, that counts for a lot. I don't think they can beat whoever's in the West, but I do think certainly they can beat the Celtics, although the Celtics have a lot of very good players. Do they have a superstar? Is Tatum a superstar now? Maybe he's on the brink.
Close, yeah.
Huh?
Close.
Yeah. So I think Siakam has now become great. This Fred VanVleet, who you watched in college at Wichita State, he's now become an excellent pro.
Yes.
They just Jaylen Brown. They just keep Smart is. I know they gave it to Giannis, the Defensive Player of the Year, and I know they don't give it to guards, but you could have given it to Marcus Smart. That's how good he is. Yeah. And you'll remember essentially the clinching play against the Sixers, and B tried to throw that cross-court pass, and who intercepted it, of course, Marcus Smart, which led to that breakaway foul, which did end the game, frankly. Not that the Sixers were going to come back, but they have so many very good players, borderline stars. Tatum's a star. He's a borderline superstar. But again, the Raptors, they have the coach, not knocking Brad Stevens. They have the coach, championship coach, who did an even better job without Kawhi this year. And they got a lot of guys who can play. So I like the Raptors to come out of the East. I did not think that until I really looked at the whole season before the playoffs started, because we obviously had lots of time. So I like the Raptors to come out of the East and play the Clippers. I do still like the Clippers, but again, that assumes Paul George stays Paul George, and they need Beverly back. They need him back. He's that defender, pain in the butt. Once again, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's on any other team, every other team hates him. But we'll see what happens. I'm glad they're playing. I'm glad they took the time off. I think they made their point. I think you were right. That's their bully pulpit. If they all walked out of there, there'd be like whatever it is, 200 guys going their separate ways. So I think they did the right thing. I think you were right ahead of the curve. And I think they can still do some good. And I'm glad everybody else has joined them to some degree.
Yeah.
Baseball games canceled, NHL for 2 days. I'm glad that's all happened because it really is true. I heard one guy say, I wish I knew who it was, said, when a kid turns on the TV last night and tonight, there's no hockey and there's no basketball, they're going to turn and go, Dad, what do you mean there's no basketball? Mm-hmm. And that'll, not just black on black conversations, fathers and sons, but white on white conversations to explain, because this really has gotten out of control. And finally, there seems to be a national reaction, not just in sports, obviously.
Before I get to baseball, we're going to finish with baseball. I know you have some stories you want to tell. You want to break down some things. We'll talk about the no-hitter by Lucas Giolito. I have to talk about the Eagles. They lost Andre Dilliard, their left tackle. They already lost Brandon Brooks. They retained Jason Peters to fill in for Brandon Brooks and maybe be a fail-safe for left tackle. Now they're going to move Jason Peters, who's 38 years old, to left tackle. Probably Matt Pryor over to the right side, but that's basically 2 of your 5 starters. You know, Jason Peters has been starting forever, but the proposed starter is out. 2 of them are out. How's that going to affect the Eagles?
Yeah, I think that's very troublesome for the Eagles vis-a-vis the Cowboys. The Eagles will still be better than Washington. They'll still be better than the Giants. But we've always talked it was a 2-team race last year, and give Wentz credit for winning that Dallas game and eventually winning the NFC East.
Yeah.
But I think this is, we love Jason Peters. He's a Hall of Famer. But I don't know that you want him to start the season at left tackle because, the notion that he's going to play 16 games, that would be a miracle. He hasn't been able to do it. We both thought he was a great signing because right tackle is easier, and heaven forbid, we thought not if Dilliard got hurt and missed the season, but if Dilliard just wasn't up to the task, which we still won't know the answer next year when we're talking about him. So I think they're in trouble because, again, the Cowboys, I think losing Jason Garrett is addition by subtraction. I know he's the offensive coordinator of the Giants. And I know, look, he's probably a very good, you see some of these guys, Buddy Ryan, one of the greatest defensive coordinators ever, was not a good head coach. No. Some of these guys are not cut out to be good head coaches. And Garrett got the longest chance in the history of the NFL to be a good coach with incredible talent. We've always talked, they have more talent than the Eagles. And when we sit down to do the preview, which I guess we'll do next week or the week after, the Dallas preview is going to be, look at the 5 or 6 guys they've added on defense, including Everson Griffin, who I don't know what happened in Minnesota, but this guy is really good. And the Cowboys got him. I don't know if the Cowboys are going to get Earl Thomas. I haven't followed the Earl Thomas news lately, but certainly Dallas is in the mix. And they've really bulked up their defense. They have a good offense. And they got your guy, C.D. Lamb, right? They drafted him.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be better offensively and much better defensively. And since it really came down to the Dallas Eagles game last year for the division, I think I'm kind of leaning towards the Cowboys because these injuries are too much to overcome. It's not like the Eagles of 2 or 3 years ago when they had like 7 defensive linemen and they could just move them in and move them in and move them in, Chris Long and those guys. And if someone was hurt and missed a game, it didn't really matter as much because you had 6 other guys. Now on the line, the offensive line for the Eagles, now you have 5 guys, now you have 4, now you have 3. And again, we love Peters, but I don't know how he can stand up to a whole season. And quite frankly, he's not the Jason Peters of 5 years ago. But he's still their best bet at left tackle. And I think even if Dilliard was healthy, he might have wound up being their best bet at left tackle. We won't know. But I think it's just too fragile, too small. And if you're relying on Peters to start 16 games at left tackle, I think as much as we like him, I think you're in trouble.
You bring up a good point, Steve. We'll move on to baseball. I just want to say this, that we're not sure if Andre Dilliard can play. He played a little bit his first year. Didn't like his attitude when they made him play right tackle. Didn't like some of the things he said. His competitiveness has been questioned a little bit. I from sources tell me on the inside that they weren't all that pleased with him coming into the season. But they're not even going to know if they need another left tackle, like for the future, because it's going to put them another year behind. They still don't know if they have a left tackle. If he played this year, did not play well, then you go out and you draft a left tackle, but they're going to be a year behind. And then if he comes back and can't play, again, disaster. But let's move on to baseball. White Sox pitcher Lucas Giolito, first no-hitter this year. Got a little hairy on that last at bat. I know you want to break that down.
Well, I just, and look, the guy pitched a no-hitter, so you can't take anything away from him. But the final at bat, Eric Gonzalez had drawn the walk, a 4-pitch walk in the 4th inning. He was the only base runner. Otherwise, Giolito would be looking at a perfect game. Gonzalez's first walk of the year, by the way, which is interesting. But, a guy throws 4 out of the zone, and I saw that at bat, you couldn't swing at it even if you were like a free swinger.
Yeah.
But Gonzalez is a free swinger. So just to break down the last at bat, all credit to Giolito. He pitched a no-hitter. The first one, he throws a hook. It's a little out of the zone. Gonzalez takes a full swing and misses. The second one is so far out of the zone, same pitch, that if you look at the box, he's kind of in the left. The pitch was wound up in the left-handed batter's box, and Gonzalez, a righty, kind of half waved at it. The ump said he swung strike 2. So what are you going to throw 0-2 for a no-hitter? The catcher, McCann, maybe had the right idea. He stood up like those catchers do. He put his glove out of the strike zone, so he wants the high fastball up and away. Now, obviously, Gonzalez doesn't know that, but if you're watching the game and you see the catcher do that, it's obvious. And I'm not saying that's a bad choice. I'm saying it's the second best choice, and I'll explain why. So he throws up. He goes up, and he gives the signal, but Giolito throws a strike. He throws a high strike fastball. And Gonzalez, a pretty good fastball hitter, hits a rocket to right. You saw Engel made a very nice play, saved the no-hitter, so everything's forgotten, blah, blah, blah. But I say that was a terrible mistake, A, to call that pitch, and B, to throw it in the strike zone. Because if you have a guy and swings and misses at the first curve, outside the strike zone, or maybe a slider, the second one, he swings and misses 5 inches outside the strike zone, your next pitch to me should be a curve in the dirt, or a curve 5 inches outside the strike zone.
Right.
And see if you can get him one more time. And then if you miss, now I'm sure I didn't hear any questions of Giolito about the last pitch. That would be a little picayune, I guess.
Picayune, yeah.
But I'm sure if you spoke to the catcher, he'd say, we wanted the high strike out of the zone, and then we're going to come back with the hook away. And he's right, unless you throw it in the strike zone. So, for example, if that had been a double down the line, which it would have been if Engel doesn't make a nice play, the question after the game would be, do you regret the last pitch? And the answer would be absolutely. So I think, I thought it was great. Don't get me wrong. But I thought that was a very big mistake. Bouncing in the dirt and then go up high with the fastball. And then it's only 2-2 and then come back with the hook away. I just find that's what I love about baseball. You could really analyze that at bat. Second one I want to talk about, I got 2 more quickly. And you know this play. Gene Segura's on first. This was the top of the 6th. Phillies Nationals. Phillies won the game. And Alec Baum hits that huge fly ball to center. Victor Robles, a very good center fielder, goes back, makes an over-the-shoulder grab right near the 402 sign, on the warning track. So Segura, unfortunately for Segura, had run past second like 10 feet. And now when Robles makes the catch, Segura has to come back and touch second to go back to first. And Robles throws a 288-foot fly ball that comes right to first base. Segura's out by 5 feet. So 2 things here for you young base runners. When you're running on a play like that, run right to second base. Don't touch second. Don't go past second. If the ball drops, you should be able to score whether you're in front of second or behind. But if he catches it, you got to run 10 feet. You got to touch second. We see that occasional blooper. They run across the field. Yeah. But you got to touch second and get back to first. And the second mistake was Segura looked over his shoulder for like 2 seconds looking at the ball. What are you looking at? You got to run. So I thought it was a horrifically bad running play by Segura. And finally, Joe Birdie steals second. This is all on the same day, Joe. Joe Birdie steals second, third, and home against the Marlins.
Amazing.
Against the Mets. They have a rookie catcher, Ali Sanchez, not to be confused with Sanchez at the Yankees. But Birdie gets a walk. He steals second on the first pitch. On the transfer, Sanchez drops the ball. Now, they're playing the new semi-shift, so J.D. Davis, the third baseman, is almost on the outfield grass, 25 feet from third. He steals third. J.D. Davis can't get there in time. Apparently, Sanchez was pissed. He couldn't cover. He made a good throw, but, J.D. Davis is catching it, running it, safe at third. And then he takes a big lead off. Birdie takes a big lead off at third. J.D. Davis is still far back.
Yeah.
But Sanchez, the big mistake, of course, was he lobbed the ball back to the pitcher, Familia. He takes off. He almost falls on his face, right? You saw the replay. They called it a bear walk. He was on like his hands for like 3 steps.
Wow.
Yet he still gets up. It's a bang-bang play at home, and Familia throws the ball in the dirt, safe at home. I've never seen anything like it. But the thing to take for young catchers out of that is with any man on base, especially on third, don't ever lob the ball back. I mean, he lobbed the ball back. It was a parabola. Don't ever lob the ball back to the pitcher. And Sanchez, a rookie who should shut up, he's a rookie, was like blaming everybody but himself. But when you lob the ball back, that's a big problem. So those are my 3 plays. I thought it was fascinating because they happened in the same day. They're 3 fascinating plays to me. And that, more than any other sport, that's the beauty of baseball to me. You can look at these things, break them down, and you can talk about it for half an hour if you wanted to.
No one breaks them down like you, Steve Kallas. All right, we got to run. We got to tell the folks, though, that tomorrow night on 97.5, The Fanatic, I will be on after the Flyers-Islanders game from 10 to 12 doing post-game. Steve's going to join me. I'm also on Sunday from 4 to 8 doing the Flyers pregame. So Steve will probably join me then, too. Yeah, so it's going to be a fun. You know I love my Flyers, so it's going to have a good time with that. You can follow me on Twitter at JoeStaszak975. You can check out Steve's Facebook page, Speaking of Sports, with Steve Kallas. He's also the sports editor at WestchesterCountyPost.com. Check out his videos. Check out his articles. Great stuff. Great stuff, Steve. Steve, we'll catch you tomorrow night. Again, 97.5 The Fanatic. You can go to the website, 97.5thefanatic.com, or check out iHeartRadio. And you'll be able to tune us in somewhere between 10 and 12. Right when the Flyers-Islanders game ends, we'll be on. All right, got to go, folks. Appreciate you listening. Thanks, Steve. Great job. And we will talk to you all next week. Good night, everybody.
Always a pleasure, Joe.
You too, pal.